Woo! Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Oh. Everything feels really slow and heavy, and it just doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere, and it's because you're not. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tunes with Kobi and McCoull. If you want to know what I'm on about in the title, I put a timestamp down in the comments so you can just go straight there if you're super curious. But before I get into all of that, I'm going to do what I always do and make another beat. What am I going to start with today? I've been playing around with some really oriental and organic sounds, and I want to see if I can try and blend them into something more modern. Sounds like that. They're so rich. Lovely. So let's do some piano along with that. I like that sound. Now, we can find out with our atmosphere. Ooh. Ooh. Check it. Oh, check it. And then the 808 off. There's a vocal technique I want to test where you pitch the track up and then you sing it up and then you pitch the vocal back down and the track back down, and it gives this kind of noise to it. I think you can probably just do it straight away with some plugins or changing the formant, but I just want to experiment pitching the track up. So I'm going to sing in a different key, and I'm going to sing in a different language, and I'm going to sing in a different universe on a different planet. Yeah, let's do that. What am I even looking for? I'm going to find a French phrase. Phrase in France, so that I can sing it and it will sound pretty, and I don't have to really worry about what I'm saying so much. We say that time is a great teacher. It's too bad that it also kills all its students. That's an interesting translation. Tempête d'un grand maître, dit dans le malheur, de grand maître, l'éternel. Super smooth. Nice.
Bah oui, pour l'instant tout va bien, je suis contente, hein. Je me dis, j'espère que ça s'est pas condensé.
Woo! Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, 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 hey. As usual, I'm going to go and tweak it a little bit and play around with everything, try to get it sounding as good as possible. Then I'll show you what I end up with, and then we'll break it down. So I'm just going to break the beat down roughly, just explain the processing that I used to try and get it to do what it does. I started with the instruments, so this atmospheric sound. And I didn't want it to play too many notes, so I just wanted it to complement the chords that were playing at the time. And I printed it out. I find that printing out all of the stuff that you use, because the sound was originally from Omnisphere, but whether it's Omnisphere, Serum, any other synthesizer, printing the sound out gives you a lot more CPU for one, and it also allows you to cut it off and control it even more so than you would if it's just MIDI. But the MIDI is still there. I could still go back and take the MIDI back in if I really need to. But I find doing that, it gets it kind of in concrete, forces you to move on, like commit to the decisions you've made and move on and start doing something else. So there's the atmosphere there. And then I made these pulse chords. Boom, boom. So I made those in Serum, and again I just printed those out. I then took the piano and did more or less the same thing as the wobbly chords do, but I had some going smooth and some being slightly more on, and then a couple of little licks over the top. And I just played these straight in to the direct input from my keyboard rather than connecting them to MIDI, because again it just forces me to make a decision, stick with the recording and go with it, rather than, because when it's sitting there as a MIDI file you can always go back and change it. If it works, it works. You just get on with it and keep going. Next thing was the drums, and all it is a relatively simple kick and snare pattern. The most significant thing being that I used a different snare in the build up to the snare and the drop, because it just carries different energy. I don't even like calling it a drop, the breakdown bit of the song, whatever you call it, when the energy comes up. And then the hats, I also played between having them on the beat and then syncopated to the beat. So here it's on the beat with a muggy snare that's kind of underwater. It gives a much more subdued vibe. And then when it comes into the main part of the chorus, it's... So you've got shakers and the hats are syncopated instead of being on the beat. So it provides a slightly different rhythm and kind of bounce compared to the more regimented. So this is a more closed and muffled vibe, and this is a more open, flowy. But the kick stays pretty much the same all the way through. There's a couple places where it changes slightly so that it matches with the 808, and again that was something I had a sample, I plugged it into MIDI and then put in the different notes that I had using MIDI, and then again bounced it back out again so that I had it there in print. And then there were certain sections where I made the 808 slide up and down to higher notes just to bring it right out in the mix at that point, and then it can duck back under when it goes to the lower notes. And I found it works well having the 808 come on and then be taken off by the snare. So the kick turns the 808 on and the snare turns the 808 off, more or less. It doesn't have to do that every time, but that's kind of what I was going for. So and that just controls the energy a lot. If you have the 808 on all the time, that can be fine. There are a lot of songs where that happens and it's just thick, full all the time. But for this, I wanted it to have a kind of pulsating ebb and flow, and having that timing really helped, because to begin with I had the 808 playing slightly longer than I think it needed to, and it just felt loose. Everything just didn't feel quite as sharp and in control. So all of that together, the instruments and the piano, was pretty much the whole instrumental. The only other things that I added on top were just risers, fallers, and sound effects. A few different risers, a cityscape, I found it quite nice just putting on a block of a sound effect. So like the city, it's almost like you turn the city on and then turn it off again. Kind of closer proximity. One that was more distant with a police siren in the background. And it's quite effective just highlighting the space that's in a track by filling it briefly and then reintroducing it. So the sub is on, the drums are on, the city is on in that part, and then as the bass note goes down to the bottom, makes that emphasized hit, it all comes off again. Just to really drive home that there's lots of space and the whole track is building to a more energetic drop part here. Then the only other thing that I added on top of it were the vocals. Now, the track that I have up at the top here is just the original track pitched up too. So I then just found a French saying that I liked and sang it 2 semitones up so that when I then pitched that back down, it sounded more wispy. So if I remove the pitch, that's it without any pitching it down, but then when I pitch it back down too, it sounds like this. And I'll put the French saying up on the screen just now. All it essentially means is that time is a fantastic teacher, or the best teacher, yet it kills all of its students. I resonated with that a lot because recently I've been talking about this with my friends, the fact that over your life you build up so much knowledge, so many memories, so much capacity to do things, and then that can all just disappear in an instant. And I just wonder where it all goes. It's such a bizarre phenomena. So I was actually really delighted to have found a way to put that in a song, but by making it another language, if you want to read into it, you can, but you don't have to. It could just be some random weird noises. And that's actually what I had originally. I was just going to sing some random weird noises in a French accent, but then I thought, okay, no, we'll actually try and make it mean something for those that would want it to mean something. And I recorded 2 of them and sent them to either side just to give a thicker, fuller sound rather than just having one. Because it kind of just tickles both of your ears rather than being in the center and harder to discern, and it means that the instruments have more space in the middle. But then in other places I just had it just one single voice slap bang in the middle. I then also automated the volume of the reverb and the effects, so like I would always do, just again to control the energy of the song. And then I also had a sort of bandpass filter. I just automated it so that I got rid of most of the low and a lot of the high end, so it gives that sort of telephone feeling. And then here, this parameter within FL Studio, I then just automated that up and down so that I could control it being a really thick and full sound here. So you have the full spectrum of frequencies there because it's automated down, whereas in this bit, it's thinner and more delicate, and just moving that up and down at different sections of the song just as a nice effect, just to add a bit more texture to the entire thing. And then I just took some reverse sounds as well. Once again, just really commanding the direction and energy of the song. And I never know how many vocals to put on something like this because I'm just experimenting. I'm just kind of playing around and having fun with it. But as ever, I really enjoyed where it was starting to go. So who knows, I might kind of take it further and add some other layers. I'd probably put in some other harmonies. And I wouldn't just have it do the same thing over and over again because I think it could be nice to build upon that in some way. The rest of it was just volume automation and staying in control, and I do as best as I can to try and label and organize everything so that if I really want to turn something off or automate something, it's not that difficult to do because it's all relatively organized and it's easy to keep track of. and it takes a little bit more time and effort, but it actually seems to produce a much more tight, controlled sound, which I would happily sacrifice 5-10 minutes reorganizing the project for every now and again. The most significant thing I learned doing this whole beat is the very thing I mentioned in the title, so let's get into that just now. So, real talk, here's the Tuesday Tunes top tip for today. It's a very simple principle, and that is to learn when to stop. Simple as it sounds, it's actually an incredibly challenging thing to develop the intuitiveness and the self-awareness to do effectively. I've experienced this a lot, especially when you set yourself deadlines and goals, where the temptation is there to just keep working, even if something is not getting any better. Everything feels really slow and heavy, and it just doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere, and it's because you're not. Funnily enough, we don't function exactly the same way that a computer does. Even computers eventually wear out and need parts replaced. Now, the principle applies ubiquitously across the short term and the long term, and probably the mid-term as well, but I'm just going to use the short term and the long term examples to give you an idea of what I mean. Now, the short term, I mean within each session, you want to give yourself, I guess you could call it a focus block, where you're actually working for a specific amount of time, and then either as soon as you realize that you're dropping off and you can't maintain the same level of focus and intensity, or you just don't have the same cognitive power, you then stop for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, go outside, get a cup of tea, just do something other than making music, because just continuing for as long as you possibly can, it doesn't produce the desired result at all, because things actually take longer, they're less enjoyable, it's definitely worse for your health just sitting still in the same spot the whole time, glaring at a screen and blasting your ears with loud music. And it actually just reduces your capacity to be sensitive to the sounds, especially if you're doing something that is sensitive like mixing or mastering or singing or playing an instrument or something. All of these things require complex skills that need the best of your brain's capacity, which it won't perform at for hours upon end. Like I say, the solutions for that are having focus blocks, getting up, moving about. It doesn't mean go and be distracted by something random or pick up your phone. I found for me, picking up my phone is not a good way to do something else, because then you're still using your brain, but you're just getting distracted. Switch off so that when you switch back on, you stay up at that level of high intensity, because that's where your best work is going to come from. And the same thing applies beautifully well in the long term too. One crazy intense and super long day where you do loads of work is not as good as 7 days where 5 of those 7 days you were really balanced and you did lots of decent productive work. In the same way that one intense crazy week is not as good as 1 month where you stayed well in tune with your biology, with the best version of yourself, because you were giving your body the rest and the recuperation that you needed. And it just keeps going up and up like that. And within this creative game or industry, the long term is so important. Sometimes even learning to stop before you get too tired, instead of just waiting until you're like, oh, I'm knackered, I can't do any more, and then stop. I'm not performing at my best, I'm going to give myself a break and come back to it. What you often find with musical ideas as well is that the best way to come up with a better idea is to stop thinking about it and go and do something else for a while and then come back to it with fresh ears. And that's exactly what I found happened with this beat. I was playing around with it the night before and it just wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't enjoying it, and I got to the point where the synth noise, I'd listened to it so many times over and over in a loop that I was like, this just sounds rubbish, or I can't even tell what this sounds like. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to stop. And I'm glad that I did, because when I came back to it the next morning, it just happened so much quicker, so much easier, and so much more enjoyably. So keep doing all you can to develop your self-awareness and intuition so that you can tell when is a good time to stop. Sometimes if you are working to a deadline and you've got to get something completed, then you do just have to push through, even if it's tough or it's getting late into the night or whatever. And so sometimes that sacrifice is fine, just not on a regular basis. But so yeah, that's the Tuesday Tunes top tip for today. Let me know what you think of it, and also if you've got any other advice on that area. I know I'm still learning every day how to do this better, and it's always a constant ebb and flow. That's why, like I say, it can't really ever be black and white, work for this long, then stop, because ultimately it's totally dependent upon you and your journey. So I hope you enjoyed this beat. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you learned something new. If you have any questions or would like to make any comments, just fire them down below or hit me up on Instagram. I'd love to connect. I've been really grateful for being back home and in the countryside, because I know that a lot of people are getting cabin fever, cooked up in their flats, which I would have been if I hadn't managed to escape just before they called the lockdown. So it's been so nice being out here, and I think I'll try and get some more footage of the things I've been doing out and around the house for the next video. But once again, thanks very much for stopping in, and until the next video, bye.
This is love.